It's not been a classic for Brabham so far this year, failing to trouble the scorers for the first 6 races. It's been reliability, not speed, that's been the problem, at least as far as Piquet is concerned, and he's usually been there or thereabouts before the inevitable breakdown. Back in 1982, a resurgence of form in the mid-season North American races put Piquet back on track to take the title race to the wire. Can he do it again this year? The Farby brothers in Car 2 were always going to struggle in the circumstances, and Teo is apparently actively trying to get out of his IndyCar contract now to concentrate on F1, but even so they've been surprisingly far off Piquet's pace, and the team may wish they still had Patrese instead. The only atmospheric cars on the grid have done well in the tight street circuits and struggled more at the high-speed ones, which is only to be expected. Suspicions of some kind of funny business have hung over the team most of the year, and the upcoming FISA investigation should decide things one way or another. We'll see what comes of it, but regardless, the 2 rookie drivers have acquitted themselves well, Stefan Beloff in particular, who showed immense precision on the soaked streets of Monaco. Williams have had a similar experience to Brabham, though here it is speed rather than reliability. The FW09 chassis is still problematic, understeering and producing a lot of drag at high speeds, while the Honda engine is certainly powerful, but tends to deliver that power all at once, to the extent that the engineers have even found some parts of the engine block twisted at the end of the race thanks to the sudden torque. Rosberg has certainly flattered the car with his usual gutsy driving, but Lafitte has been nowhere all year, and it'll be surprising if he's still in a Williams in 1985. An updated chassis should be ready for Brands Hatch, and Frank, Patrick and co will all be hoping that it can make the difference. The North American Tour didn't treat McLaren kindly, but the first 6 races of the year saw them almost totally dominant in terms of pace, and the team went into the Canada weekend leading the Constructors' Championship by a country mile. Prost and Lauda still lead the drivers' standings after Dallas, but the others have caught up a bit, and they'll need to hit the ground running back in Europe if they're to regain their momentum. If Ralph and McDonald thought that severing ties with the March organisation would make things easier for them, they have been disappointed, as the team have been routed to the back of the grid, usually outqualified by the atmospheric Tyrrells, as well as everybody else. Palmer has been the more consistent driver, with Alio not finishing until Canada, but neither has exactly impressed, and the North American round saw a lot of expensive smashes that can't be improving morale and driver-mechanic-owner relations. Lotus have been in the doldrums since 1979. Apart from De Angelis' win in Austria in 1982, they've seldom looked like race winners until this year. Reliability has cost them, particularly with Mansell, who seems to drive the car a lot harder. He's looked the livelier of the two in terms of racing, but has also broken down or chucked it into a wall more often, while De Angelis has raced smoothly, unspectacularly, and scored points in every race except South Africa to sit 3rd in the table. The team is not yet fully back at the sharp end, but a Lotus win looks likelier now than at any time in the last 5 years. ATS have 2 main problems at the moment. The first is the BMW engine, which looked like such a coup at the start of last year, but is proving unreliable with only 2 finishes so far. Gustav Brunner's neat D7 chassis is clearly good, and Winkelhock usually qualifies well, but is usually seen pulling over with a smoking engine before the midpoint. The second problem is the owner. Gunter Schmidt is that difficult combination of volatile and short-tempered, and very hands-on, driving many talented people away from the team over the years, and irritating many in the rest of the pit lane to boot. Renault had hoped for a fresh start in the post-Prost era, and both Tombe and Warwick certainly have the talent to be championship material, but all in all it feels like a little bit of a step back for the team this year. Qualifying pace has dipped, and the reliability issues are back. Tombe has had all the bad luck, but many are asking questions about the apparent fragility of the chassis, given the number of minor incidents that have led to injuries to the drivers. Derek Warwick has certainly proved a good signing, and you wouldn't bet against him taking a maiden win this year, which would put smiles on a lot of faces in the paddock where Derek is a popular figure. Like ATS, the Arrows team were delighted to score a deal for BMW turbo engines, only to have them prove unreliable. And the A7 chassis built for it doesn't seem nearly as drivable as its predecessor, which Sura elected to continue racing as long as he could. Both drivers at least are talented and making the best of things. Boutsen has put a point on the board, in the Ford-powered A6, and perhaps most importantly after last year, the team's financial situation seems much more stable now. At the end of 1983, Toleman scored points in the last 4 races in a row. This year they've been much less consistent, only scoring points twice. Of course, one of those was second place in Monaco, a race which most pundits agree Senna would have won if it had continued much longer. Ayrton is clearly a talent and an able replacement for the long-serving Warwick, while Cecotto has been less impressive, though off the track he's a cheery personality and a great foil to the very intense Senna. There's still potential, but they've not really looked as good as they did at the end of last year. Another team using Brian Hart's cheap but down-on-power turbo engine, the unfortunate Spirit team, are doing what they can with what they have, which sadly isn't much. Mauro Baldi seems to have run out of sponsorship entirely after dragging the thing to the finish twice, so the team have kept Rothengatter around, at least until someone with more money comes along. A new look for Alfa Romeo, new drivers, new management, but the same old story, of huge resources and no results. Riccardo Patrese and Eddie Cheever are both combative drivers, but have apparently fallen out, after Riccardo didn't share important setup information at Monaco, leading to Eddie failing to qualify. That won't be helping, but the main problem is that the car is unreliable and very thirsty. If they make it to the end of the race without breaking down, they probably just run out of fuel instead. Osella's first points of the year in Dallas, their only previous points were at the much-reduced San Marino Grand Prix in 1982, were a just reward for this persistent and hard-trying little team. Ghinzani has rarely been out of the 20s on the grid and only finished 2 races before Dallas, but almost everyone on the grid wants to see them do well, and once back in Europe they should expand to 2 cars again for Joe Gartner to see out the season. As with all small teams, just finishing is something of an achievement, especially with the thirsty Alfa Romeo engine. After a dismal 1983, Ligier was supposed to be heading back to the big time in 1984 with the addition of Renault turbo power, but it just hasn't happened. OK, neither André de Cesaris nor François Hinault look like top-line drivers, but even then the car just isn't fast enough. They've advanced from the back of the grid to midfield at least, and de Cesaris has scored points a couple of times and looked good duelling with De Angelis for third at Imola until he ran out of fuel. So there's promise, but it's not the return to the top they were hoping for. Ferrari are second in the constructors' table almost by default. Except for Alboretto's dominant win at Zolder, the red cars have seldom looked like race winners, taking points more for consistent finishing when the Brabhams, McLarens, Williamses and Lotus fell by the wayside. Early on, it looked like Alboretto would dominate Arnoux the way Tombe did early last year, but René has come good. His brilliant drive from back to second in Dallas is a particular highlight, while Michele seems to have gone off the boil slightly, and has also had the lion's share of the unreliability and general bad luck. The team have already announced that both drivers have re-signed for 1985 though, so clearly Il Commendatore is happy enough with their efforts.